morning, afternoon, whatever we are now. Sorry for the late start. Turns out that this is an accurate representation of not just the road to mainstream matrix, but also the combination of HDMI and USB-C devices before me. So I'm now going to fit a probably 55-minute presentation into about 40 minutes. So buckle up, because we're going for a ride. So first of all, hopefully everybody knows by now, Matrix is an open network for secure, decentralized real-time communication. The mission being to build the real-time communication layer of the open web. The whole idea is that no single party owns your conversations. They are replicated, shared across all participating servers. So different graph this time, looking at the 30-day retained users. So this is the actual secret metric that we've been staring at. It's literally on a Grafana dashboard in the wall of the Matrix Foundation offices in Chiswick in London, looking at how many people have actually been hanging around for at least 30 days on the platform at any given point. So if they stop using it for more than 30 days, they disappear. If they're being added for more than 30 days, then they get added to the tally count. And this is based on the phone home stats that Synapse has across all reporting servers. And you can see that many years ago now, 6 years ago, we were down at a couple of tens of thousands. It's been growing fairly linearly. We've had some kind of more exponential phases through to 2022, then a bit of a slowdown in 23, but then I'm happy to say in 2024 things are moving off, and indeed since the summer things are really heading on a slightly better track again. So we are here today to talk about the road to mainstream matrix, and this is a road that has both a past and a future. So I warn you, if you expect me to talk an awful lot of very geeky stuff about new MSCs, this is going to be a bit of a mix. We're going to look at things in the bigger picture for once, so I apologize if anybody flees in horror at this, but I promise we'll have some fun demos, which definitely won't work, given I'm doing this off Hammond's laptop, but let's find out where it goes. So first of all, in the past, May 2014, the dream. We sat down and said, hey, why don't we try to build the missing communication layer of the web? And we already had a team of about 10 folks who'd been working together for about 10 years, doing lots of SIP, we wrote our own VoIP stacks, and all that sort of thing. And our idea was that we would build an implementation first, called Synapse, and in fact, originally Matrix was called Project Synapse, that was the code name. And we would use this implementation to prove the protocol worked and try to figure it out, and then, having implemented it, would we spec it, updating the one true spec. This would keep us anchored in reality, hopefully. The whole idea had been that we would prioritize a killer app, a actual real-life production code, over a theoretical protocol. And this is, I apologize for the corporate PowerPoint, this is the original Project Synapse timeline, before it was even called Matrix. And you can see, starting in May, we go and actually build the thing. We launch it at TechCrunch Disrupt. We then go around the world telling people how amazing it is, including FOSDEM in February 2015. So this is our 10th year at FOSDEM, and then we would try to get people to actually use it. And you can possibly read, it says here, get the glossy app to differentiate, which is horrible business speak for saying we want to have a killer app that people can actually use. So, 2014 September, here we are at 4 or 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning of the TechCrunch Disrupt hackathon. Weirdly enough, nobody is hacking on Matrix because it is about 6 hours old at this point, and so we do so instead. We ship Synapse, we go and ship this thing called SciWeb, which became renamed to Matrix Console, and actually had an awful lot of stuff. You'd have chat, you'd have one-to-one VoIP, you get Federation in there too. I think VoIP got added literally at the last hour. And again, the whole idea is it would prove the implementations and then we'd spec it. And it looked like this. So this is a real screenshot from a few days before launch on September the 3rd with a stupid Inception joke and the XKCT joke. And you can see even at this point that people have got their real Matrix IDs. You can see Eric on Eric J on jki.re. You can see me as Arathorn on Aerosphere.net and a whole bunch of other people. And it's ugly as sin. And if anybody can be bothered to click on that hyperlink, you would go there in your Matrix client today and see that it is still there. The images won't work because this is pre-release, and so obviously we broke the API at the last minute before we actually released. But it's kind of fun that we can time travel all the way back there. Also, during the hackathon, we made Animatrix. Anybody know what Animatrix is? Ooh, okay, about 10 people. So I'll show you about 5 seconds of our slightly cringy hackathon pitch showing this thing off, assuming that we've got enough connectivity. What we have here is a Unity thing where you use inverse kinematics to go and puppet this little character, hit send, and the world's first ever Android Matrix client, and that was literally what became eventually Riot Android and nowadays Element Android, was written in order to take this 3D telemetry, define your own animation of the stick man going and wandering across the thing, hit send it to the other person, they re-render it. This is 4 years before Memoji, I hasten to add. So what does this tell us? We really, really want Matrix to be more than chat. We want it to be mainstream, not just for geeks, no offense, and governments, probably no offense. We had a lot more dev skills, frankly, than product skills. We'd taken building glossy mainstream apps completely for granted. We'd done it before, but always with lots of support. We thought we could do it by ourselves. And also worth noting that Matrix really began as this existing centralized team, unlike a typical FOSS project. So, 2015, how are we going to fund this? Still need a killer app. So let's go and build something on top of this. We figured out there are 75 different products you can build on Matrix, and really irritatingly, I can't find the notes from back then. But I remember clearly one of them was, hey, we should take this Animatrix thing and create an crazy sort of visual chat application on it. Or we could do IoT over Matrix. Or we could do live video mixing for drones flying around sort of big arenas and you'd mix it together on Matrix. Or we could build virtual worlds on Matrix. We could do dating apps. Or we could do GovTech comms. But seriously, it would be crazy if governments ever built on Matrix. And what we decided in the end was to converge on this thing that was originally codenamed Skype done right, and then subsequently got renamed Open Hangouts, as the idea of basically a professional collaboration app that was open source. How hard can it be? And we called it Vector, a vector to push Matrix out into the world. And we launched it at OSCON, which was an interesting experience. And that then became Riot and became Element, and it had this ugly baby blue color theme, but that is the same code base as Element Web on the day it was born. End-to-end encryption started at the same time. I think it's interesting to note that this could be the original sin of Matrix, at least in terms of development velocity. People who remember Matrix before E2E back then, I suspect felt, oh my God, this thing is going incredibly fast. They've got VoIP, they've got all this stuff, it's federating, it's amazing, state res might even work someday. And then we added in end-to-end encryption, and frankly, everything ground to not a halt, but probably about 10x slower than we'd been going before. Because it turns out that decentralized encryption is rather hard. Then, 2015 to 16, I described this as premature success. Around this point, Matrix is getting real attention. Lots of people getting very excited about this new protocol that will liberate us from the silos. Entirely my fault for hyping it to the heavens and back again. Lots of pressure from the community to improve the spec because it was very much following what we had been implementing, and the spec process wasn't there, the governance process wasn't there. It's interesting because we ended up investing a lot of time into trying to make the spec something that everybody could build on, rather than actually investing in making it mainstream and making sure that we had a killer app that people could use. And I think it's an interesting and very controversial viewpoint, which will probably get people to throw rotten fruit at me, that perhaps in retrospect, we should have ruthlessly prioritized polishing the app, or an app, to drive mainstream adoption, rather than perhaps prematurely focusing on the open ecosystem. So one thought experiment is that Matrix itself perhaps should not have been primarily positioned as a protocol. Matrix could have been the name of an app which was a Trojan horse, unashamedly, for a protocol. So rather than setting the expectations from the outset as the missing communication layer of the web, you could have just shipped a really, really good thing like, say, Skype, which was originally decentralized. Imagine if Skype was open source. And then you could have factored out a protocol from that. And it's interesting seeing what the Blue Sky folks are up to with AT Proto. Again, pretty controversial, but frankly it seems to be working out for them, that they are effectively smuggling a genuinely decentralized protocol in under the auspices of what looks like a centralized communication network. I personally know the guys, and I believe that they are genuinely aiming to decentralize things, but they're basically following that track that we didn't follow. And as a result, They have a really mainstream, successful, decentralized social app, whereas we have been on this Escher like infinite staircase. 2017, a new vector, if you get the gag. Team sets up Element to fund the work that had been happening for Matrix. At the same time, we started setting up the Matrix Foundation as a non-profit guardian to make sure that Matrix would be independent from Element and other commercial Matrix vendors. Community stepped up with donations to the foundation in 2017. Thank you so much. We would never have been able to raise money Element by saying, hey, look, people believe in Matrix because they donate and fund it. And subsequently, Element managed to raise cash from Status and then later from financial VCs and other investors. Something that people don't always seem to remember is that Element has spent 70–80% of its funding on basically building out Matrix for everybody for many, 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 many years, transferring that IP through to the Matrix Foundation. So then, happy days, 2018 to 21, halcyon days. So Matrix grew, matures, we finally shipped 1.0 in June 2020. Lots of projects and companies and organizations grow on the protocol. Open source communities like FOSDEM, and Zilla, KDE, GNOME, and so many others go Matrix. And governments start rolling it out to provide digital sovereignty. The killer apps do start to, you see some hints at killer apps forming. Element actually hires a design and a product team and starts fixing the baby blue color scheme we saw earlier. Beeper forks and improves Element and shows that you can build a really nice killer app on top of Matrix and indeed Element. Lots of amazing experimental projects at the same time. This is all my fault, going around saying, right, we're building the missing communication layer of the web. We need to grab as much attention and funding as possible and show the potential and inspire people to build on it. When people build the metaverse, they should build it on Matrix. If they want to, they should have local first Matrix. We'll build peer-to-peer. We'll do low bandwidth. We'll put it over HF radios. Not that anyone's seen that. We've done hydrogen for lightweight Matrix. We've got Dendrite for next generation. We went and merged Gitter into Matrix. 3D calling, VR demos, CRDTs, Element Drive, applications beyond chat. And all of this inspirational work, I think, made for some fun demos at FOSDEM. I think, at least. I had fun. But it did steal a lot of energy from actually writing that killer mainstream app. So, 2022, the wheels come off. A series of unfortunate events. Markets crash post-COVID. No more ZIRP, no more investment, really. Element isn't profitable yet, and so not in a position to raise much more investment, having been chucking all of the dollars into Matrix. No other player in the ecosystem is contributing dollars at the same level. But hey, obviously it's going to be fine. Matrix is doing great. Huge, strong uptake in public sector. Governments realize that the idea that your country is operationally dependent on a private US tech company like Microsoft is bananas. It makes no sense if you're like Sweden or somebody. And honestly, the evidence has obviously mounted since then when you see the terrifying ASIA signing keys going out the door and all the Teams compromises and Exchange compromises there have been. Basically, people have waked up that they need to run their own comms, which is great. And so Element says, hey, in order to keep funding Matrix, we'll go and focus on government implementations in a bid to get profitable and sustainable. So this turns out to have two big failure modes. The government said, we want Matrix, so here's a public tender to the world to please provide us with Matrix deployment. Then big system integrators who spend their lives going and selling big IT projects to governments pitch for the tender. They're well positioned to win because they do this all the time. They've got local staff, they've got the $1 billion of revenue they need to qualify, they've got existing contracts, they know the right people in the ministry and all that sort of thing. And then the tender typically is awarded to the cheapest proposal. So, in order to win the tender and keep the price down, the SI just follows the law of capitalism and the law of the market and says, right, we will pick up open source Synapse on GitHub and we will deploy it and we will support that ourselves and we will take all of the money from the government for this tender and we will not route any of it to the upstream project. And you think, hey, okay, that's not ideal. And it happened a few times. Ooh, exciting. And it was a bit cringy, but there we go. It turned out not to be a one-off, particularly in 2022. Basically, almost every deal, I think, that we had on the Element side for providing Matrix to governments ended up disappearing to somebody who basically could win it because they didn't have the cost of developing Matrix. So this is 3 emojis of skull bad. Failure mode 2 is a bit different. The government just says, hey, the FSFE have told me that public money for public code. This is a great idea. We want to make sure that all of our development will be open source. But we don't have budget for maintenance or support fees. So what we'll do is that we'll run this ourselves. Otherwise, we can't spend money on sort of a recurring thing to pay for this. We'll go and buy some features, but sorry, we don't have budget. Otherwise, we might as well be buying proprietary software for how expensive it could be. So the upstream gets paid to do features, which is good. Like all of Element X, for instance, is pretty much funded by doing development like that. But then again, the features you do might not actually create a mainstream product. They might not be particularly coherent. The funding is typically one-off. Say, hey, here's 500K to go and implement threads and whatever. However, then you've got threads, which are a maintenance nightmare, and no one providing cash to basically keep folks paid, at least as their day job, to maintain it. Boo. So, survival time. This is probably end of 2023, beginning of 2024. Matrix is taken as granted, as a commons. Hooray, we succeeded, everybody. Open source creators across the Matrix ecosystem, not just Element, but basically most of the Matrix vendors are suffering the same problems because they release as open source and there is no direct incentive for anybody to actually pay an open source project anything. So, started to get fairly drastic at the end of 2023. So trying to get Element sustainable so that it could keep donating to Matrix. Ironically, Element stopped donating most of the work to the foundation, switched from Apache to AGPL in order to sell AGPL exceptions to the people like the system integrators who want to customize it. R&D projects get shelved in favor of focusing on stability and quality. Arguably probably a good thing for the ecosystem overall, but even then, free riding is still posing an existential threat to the whole ecosystem. Free riding is the technical economic term for this failure mode when people take the free thing and milk it for all it's worth and don't maintain it. Interestingly, the press is starting to notice this. There was an article yesterday in the press about the German healthcare deployments of Matrix for health insurance companies, where there's a recurring theme that folks are picking up open source implementations, whether it's, servers from Element or clients from other Matrix vendors, and going and using them, including as AGPL, without routing any cash back. No, these are large amounts of money to go and provide a service for tens of millions of citizens and users. And so we've basically started talking to the press and saying, look, this is a bit of a scandal, really, because it's not sustainable if they go and do these tenders and it then falls apart because there's nobody to write the software. It's not going to look very good. So the press is starting to pick it up. But there is hope. There is a really simple answer here. Basically, if you are buying a commercial Matrix deployment, you should mandate that the upstream project is funded by buying that upstream's products if they have one. Now, sometimes it's just going to be a little organic open source project, but these things are complicated, or when they look as if they're successful, even the one-man bands go and say, right, I'm going to try to pay my rent using this and set up a small outfit in order to support the development costs. And the rule of thumb, the idea, is that you, as somebody wanting to run a commercial Matrix deployment, should just pay for what you use in order to keep the project free as in libre. So only buy from people who are actually going to fund upstream maintenance. And that can be a system integrator. It can be anybody, as long as you actually have a paper trail showing that some of that cash might go back to paying the rent of the people who are working on it. So the idea is that you would normalize paying for open source products, much as folks pay for proprietary ones. I mean, we were looking at the costs, I think, of one of the German ministries of how much they pay Adobe for like Acrobat licenses every year. Or was it Microsoft for licenses too? And we're literally talking towards the billions of euros a year. And then they say, oh yeah, but we can't possibly, we don't have the 2 million a year that would be needed to go and provide some support for the Matrix stuff. It's a really weird thing, and we just want to normalize it so that it's not embarrassing to actually pay the people who write open source software. And people might say, oh, but the upstream is trying to vendor lock you, and this is evil Element or whoever going and trying to force people to buy their thing. And there are other implementations out there. If the upstream product isn't suitable, then you switch. And this would then be true public money for public code. And some people get it really right. I think the flagship here is Zendis, the Center of Digital Sovereignty in Germany, where they've literally done this. I think they work with 8 different vendors. Yeah, round of applause for Zendis. Seriously, thank you, because it was very, very helpful for Zendis to say, well, we work with 8 different folks to incorporate them into OpenDesk. We've got Element, we've got Nextcloud, we've got Open Project, we've got XWiki, we've got Open Exchange, we've got all of these, and our ground rules are that we will actually just go and pay for their professionally supported product. Full stop. And it was like, oh my God, I wish everybody did that. And Sweden, again, doing the right thing. US, NATO doing the right thing. UK kind of trying to do the right thing. So some people definitely get it. Anyway, where are we now? It's 2025, by the way. I would say that Matrix is closer to mainstream adoption than ever. We're obviously not there yet. No, it's what 400,000 R30 users was the graph on the first page. The path has been winding. Like a lot of Matrix vendors, including Element, but others as well, have ended up focusing on GovTech and healthcare to survive. And as a result, you end up with enterprise features getting prioritized over the mainstream consumer and community-centric features. That said, what's good for GovTech is often good for mainstream uptake too. No, the competition here is basically WhatsApp or Signal or Slack or Teams. Now, on the Matrix side, the strategy has been the most important stuff now is to actually get everything fast, beautiful, or able to support beautiful apps, and basically excellent. Not necessarily chase shiny mainstream features, but make sure that the underpinnings are rock solid, so that other folks, whether that's Beeper or Element or Fluffy Chat or anybody, have the best possible infrastructure and APIs to build whatever killer app that happens to be. And so Matrix 2.0 is basically that long-running project to try to ensure that Matrix can support mainstream uptake. So, Matrix 2.0 first announced 2 years ago to the day in FOSDEM on this stage. The whole idea is that you make it work right, and now in 2.0 you actually make it not suck. You make it fast and usable, you can outcompete the mainstream apps. Implementations to prove that the MSCs for Matrix 2.0 can work landed in September 24. And they are next-gen auth, which gives you QR login and two-factor auth and multi-factor auth, native OIDC and all sorts of amazing good stuff. Implemented all over the shop now. There's a Dendrite PR very kindly contributed by someone called Midnight. And Element X, Fractal, I think, landed it last Friday as well. And the idea on this is that it will get turned on matrix.org basically as soon as the MSC passes FCP, so that we drag everybody on the matrix.org instance kicking and screaming into the brave new OIDC world future. And I will show you how cool and why that is a good thing in a few, if I have time. Then we've got simplified sliding sync. This is instant logging, instant launch, and instant stink. Natively implemented in Synapse, and I saw that Conduit has landed it too, or at least there's a PR for it. This is very close to being FCP'd on the MSC. It has one edge case, I believe, remaining about handling deleted state. Then, Matrix 2.0, Matrix RTC, so native encrypted group VoIP calling, implemented an Element Call Web and Element X. I believe that the Famedly stack also has Matrix RTC support. In this one, we are still incorporating feedback from the MSCs from the September launch. And then finally, invisible crypto. Some people don't understand invisible crypto at all and say, oh, this is crap. They're removing all of the warnings. It will not be safe anymore. This is the opposite of what invisible encryption is. The whole idea is to make it more safe by removing the unactionable cryptic, if you see what I did there, warnings about message authenticity or unverified devices. And also adds identity pinning too. This is a big change. It will require users to verify their devices at login, but then we can just simplify the experience massively. You don't have this legacy concept of weird devices hanging around, which are probably an attacker because they didn't prove that they were owned by their actual owner. So, when we launched this at the Matrix conference in September, showed off a bunch of demos, and everybody said, well, that's nice. How do I use it? And we said, oh, crap. We kind of forgot to actually ship this in a community-friendly distribution. Sorry about that. Good news, though, is that on the Element side, there will be open source AGPL Helm charts coming out soon, in the coming months. In the meantime, though, I have a hacky workaround, which is going to be very interesting to demo without my laptop. How are we going to do this? Shall we see if I can break into Amandine laptop and actually shell into my dangerous demo thing? Can you hold a mic for me, because we don't do Britney mics anymore, apparently. Thank you. Right. Let's see if I can just shell in. No, that was literally what I was hoping would have been fixed. Let me see if I can switch back to my laptop. Any hope of this coming up? Okay. I'm going to have fun here. So the problem here is I need to figure out how to shell into my server, obviously. So talk among yourselves for a second. I was hoping that somebody might have done this whilst I was doing the talk. Right, almost there. Okay. So the fact that I'm using dangerous demos here is going to be fun. The chances of the screen share now working are presumably nil. Come on, everybody pray. There we go. Right. That is the single most stressful SSH restart I've ever done in my life. Come on, please let me in. No. I should have messed around with SSH keys instead. Unless, of course, that's just the wrong password. I probably don't have a password on it. Oh. That's because they reset my password for me. Thanks, guys. Well, at least they tested it. Right, okay. So Dangerous Demos is a DigitalOcean VPS, which is completely naked and new. I do have a test checkout here called Element Docker Demo, which I am going to... oh, God, this is going to go well, isn't it? Go and delete. Come on, Matthew, type. Serious? Oh, because they've gone and changed my password for me. Right, and then I'm going to go and check this thing out afresh. So this is a really basic Docker Compose setup that I did just to go and be able to shelf Matrix 2.0 stack for things like this. Do not use it in production. It is, God, we're not using Subversion anymore, are we? Come on, focus, Matthew. And of course, the connectivity is giving me about 2 seconds of latency on typing here. Right, so this thing is a really, really, really simple repository. If I go and look at it, you can see here, you've got some scripts, you've got a template for some configuration, and if we look at what we have here, there's a setup script. So I'm going to run a setup script, and I'm going to say I want to create a new server called FOSDEM.dangerousdemos.net. I'm going to not use mkcert, I'm going to use Let's Encrypt. I'm going to chuck it over to matthew@matrix.org, and we're going to set up Let's Encrypt quickly, and yes, so it will be nice and let the EFF spam me. And pray that Let's Encrypt is not going to rate limit my IP or something, because that would be bad. Right, and it's gone and set up a Let's Encrypt certificate for me. Then I do Docker Compose up, and we're in. That's it. Let's see if it even works. Oh, yeah. Come on. So go and look in the background. There's Synapse desperately flying around the place. And here is your new element install. Now, weirdly enough, out of the box, it doesn't have account registration turned on. So I guess I should have set this running in the screen session, shouldn't I? Let me Control-C on that, and perhaps set that running in a screen session instead. Docker Compose up. All right, so let do it in the background, and I'm going to look at the README, and it gives you a little command line to run, which is to register a user. So this is using mass. This is the Matrix 2.0 next-gen auth stuff. And if I run that, it will say, hello, do you want to go and create a new user? I'll create one called Matthew, and I will give it a email address, and I will give it a password. Right, and that's it. Create the user. Confirm? Yes. Brilliant. So I should now be able to go over to here and sign in. Hit continue on this, and it takes me to mass. So this is now the authentication system provided not by the client but by the server. So I can hop onto the username here and try to remember the password I just set. And now this is quite a different setup in that we're giving this server or this client access to my new account. Hit continue on that. Make sure that you trust it. And hopefully, let's go back and see what's happening in my screen session. Lots of turning around. Come on. There we go. Woo! So I'm now into this brand new server. Right. So I will disable notifications, and I will go and DM somebody. Should I DM you? Okay, right, fine. So I'll go and put in MD on matrix.org here and see if Federation is going to work. Oh, there she is. Hit go. Hello. Goes and creates a room, set up recovery. Probably a good idea for us to do recovery stuff. That was, yeah. This is what happens if you demo on someone else's laptop. All right, secure backup successful. Brilliant. So do you read me? Am I there? Well, whilst Amandine logs in, thank God for that. Hey, Federation. So let's go and look at the next thing, which is the Matrix RTC, the native calling. So we do still have old one-to-one calling, but in practice, everything should be using element call these days, and we need to migrate from legacy to element call and the Matrix RTC stuff. So if I do this, and I allow this time, and I'm going to hide my thing there, then what this has done is to basically use a Matroska widget to embed the element call web app into here and start a video call. And Amandine there is just logging in on her phone there and hopefully going to turn up. And even though she's on a matrix.org server, we have federated stuff happening there. Now, you don't have Visor installed, so I'm not going to be able to screen share my phone nicely. So I'll have to use the analog gap for this bit, which is a shame because it's in some ways the best bit, but let's use... So now, let's see one of the benefits of Matrix authentication service, which is I can just go here to link new device. It gives me a QR code to scan, and I'm going to take... so can you point this? Well, you're not, this is really annoying. You're not going to be able to show me. I'm going to just go and scan that. Come on. So there's obviously a slight... so I've got a minor problem that my phone doesn't have internet connectivity. It turns out you need internet connectivity for this to work. Right, so now it's actually done it. It gives you a check code to make sure that it was me who scanned that. I then give the access to my account here. Can you point this? This? You are? You are? Okay. Oh, shit. Yeah. So you are. Right. So let's get rid of this. So you can now see there is a new login on a new IP address there. And, oh, analog gap sharing. This is what has happened on the iOS. If I hit OK, then go into here to the chat with Amandine, you can literally see that conversation with its end-to-end encrypted history has been synced in like that onto iOS. So it's a shame that you didn't see it happen in real time, because it happened basically instantly once I gave it connectivity, that I've now logged in on my phone on this brand new server, on this brand new account using the QR code. And if I open up the chat view here, you can see that, oh, in fact, a really obvious thing I could do would be to just join the call on this new login here. So there I am. go and unmute the video on that too. And woohoo, it's actually working. So, sorry, thank you. What this is showing here is also we've got multiple device support now in Matrix RTC. This started off as a one-to-one call, but then we just casually added a new device, literally a new device, in the middle of the call, and just go and participate on it too. If we had more time, I'd now do a screen share and take you through all the things, but you get the idea that it's rather cool. This, I would say, is starting to feel mainstream. No, we've got Discord-style QR login that just works with all of the encryption state. I didn't need to specify my home server. I didn't need to specify my recovery key. Didn't need to even remember my username or my password. I just clicked the link, and it took me in there with the same identity, verified out of the box. Woo! Right, I'm so running out of time, but let's keep going for it. Then, other things in 2025. Well, not. September 24, we did the first ever Global Matrix conference. This was really cool. I mean, this is, I highly recommend going to the next one, hopefully in France next year, or this year in September. But one of the things that's really struck me is that this is not, this is a properly heterogeneous ecosystem. You've got, obviously, the native Rust stack, Matrix Rust SDK that is powering the Element stack. But now you've got a totally separate stack without any lines of code overlap at all, other than, I guess, the crypto in the form of Flutter. Likewise, Kotlin multi-platform with Trixnity. Likewise, Go, which I think, are we using Go yet to Lear? So there's no code overlap at all. I see Brad saying maybe, Lear say yeah. And then React Native. So this is a new one coming from Unomed and Filament, who have taken Rust SDK and put a really good React Native binding over the top. I was playing with it the other day. It's literally about 10 lines of React Native to get your Matrix up and running. And then C++ clients like Matrix Client from Neko, and many, many more. So when people say Matrix is controlled by Element and it is not a true ecosystem, I say bullshit. Look at this list of folks who have implemented entire separate stacks independently. And the talks were amazing. Not quite as good as FOSDEM, but still amazing. We had about 50 of them. You can see all the thumbnails there. Relatively small. How many people were there, by the way? Okay, some. You should all come next year. It would be great. And some of the highlights, we heard from TI Messenger in Germany, which is rolling out Matrix for all of healthcare. We heard from OpenDesk and the Zendesk folks who I mentioned earlier, who are using us as the sort of chat subsystem for this Teams Killer initiative. You've got ePost in Switzerland. Now, this is really exciting, where they are pivoting the Swiss postal service from snail mail to Matrix. Obviously, why wouldn't you? And that may sound crazy, but it's literally what they're up to, going and deploying Matrix servers on-premise for big corporate customers, providing a SaaS hosting thing themselves, and then building a great big super app on top where all of the businesses have their own identities, a bit like, I don't know, WeChat or something like that, but also communicating out to the wider network. You've got CHAP in France. Julie did a great talk. This is still probably it must be the biggest public sector deployment with about 300,000 monthly active users, millions of messages sent a month, and each ministry getting its own home server. The stats for this, by the way, are public on stats.incubateur.beta.gov.fr or something, if you want to go and look at their Metabase dashboard and see how many people are logged in right now. Another really interesting one was NATO, using a fork of Element called NICE for low-side communication to replace WhatsApp and Signal. So that's where things are today. What comes next? Well, one of the big initiatives, which I don't have time to talk about, is StateRes v3. This is an overhaul of state resolution that we're in relatively late stages doing. This involves TARDIS, which stands for Time Agnostic Room DAG Inspection Service, which lets you visualize precisely. I'm glad somebody likes my joke. This is one of my projects with silly visualization, so you can see what's happening in your rooms and debug them. And then announced today, in about half an hour, will be Chaos, actually 1 hour. Chaos is a new tool, which is basically a Chaos Monkey petition testing tool for home servers. It causes net splits, breaks the network in a deterministic fashion, and then checks whether things converge or not. You can see why this might be useful when debugging state res issues. Keegan has written this, and you can see his talk at 2 in the dev room. MLS. If I had another 3 hours, I would talk about MLS in great detail. Lots of work on the IETF end-to-end encrypted standard over the years. The main one on our side in the core team has been decentralized MLS, but it's a bit exotic. It deviates from how RFC MLS is meant to work. We now have two MSCs out there, one from Travis and myself, one from BWI, proposing slightly different ways in which you could add MLS to Matrix. We also have things like linearized Matrix and MIMI, which are pretty similar. Progress on MLS is frankly blocked on funding right now, but it is a very active topic of research. Also, post-quantum. Last FOSDEM, we teased Polar's PQXDH implementation for FOSDEMATs. And we assumed that somebody would leap out of the audience and say, oh my God, post-quantum matrix, I'll fund that. And they didn't. So here we are, a year later, and absolutely nothing has happened on it. So if anybody wants post-quantum matrix, please can you put some money behind the bar? Likewise, MLS is experimenting with PQ as well, so we might get PQ for free with MLS, maybe, but again, further progress blocked on funding. Then Rust SDK has been evolving fast, loads of fun stuff. I'll talk about it probably in the State of the Union keynote in like 5 minutes. But big stuff is offline support, persistent event caches, threads coming pretty soon, spaces coming a bit later. Also, we're seeing these additional bindings that I mentioned. Worth considering, there may be a world without Matrix.js SDK, with WASM bindings on the horizon, thanks to Mozilla and Filament, who are implementing UniFFI or Unify support for WASM, so that we can take the existing Rust SDK bindings that support iOS and Android and just target them for the web. Very quick final demo. I'm not going to be able to show you on Amandine's laptop, which sucks, but come to the Matrix dev room and see Timo do it, because it's actually his project where he's taken Dioxys as a quick hack to take Rust SDK and put it in a browser, and I got and skinned it to look like Element, and it would have been a really cool demo to see Element X Web as a possible approach using Dioxys. Lots of mainstream features missing. Honestly, I expect everybody here knows this, both on the client and the server. Lots of trust and safety work to be done. We are expanding the team there and making some progress. And then finally, perhaps Matrix 3.0 in future. We don't know what this will be. It could be all about TNS, it could be MLS, it could be converging with MIMI, it could be peer-to-peer Matrix. Place your bets. But the foundation is key to this. The foundation is the future of Matrix in terms of protecting it from the commercial vicissitudes of vendors like Element or anyone else. And the next 10 years of Matrix will be nurtured by the foundation if it has funding. Right now, we have a bunch of funding members. We very much appreciate them. Thank you for putting money behind the bar to keep the foundation alive. We need more. We elected the governing board in May. There are now 24 people, I think, looking after the overall direction of the foundation. Please join if you're not a member already, or even better, bully your employer to join if they like Matrix and use Matrix. I'm looking at you, big tech companies who use Matrix for out-of-band communication but aren't members of the foundation, please. Then, governing board, 24 people, 11 orgs. Come listen to Greg in the dev room, say what's going on there. And we need help. Please support Matrix commercially. Buy from an upstream vendor. Doesn't have to be Element, can be any upstream vendor. Build on Matrix. Follow us on Mastodon or Blue Sky and spread the word. Thank you very much. Probably don't have time for questions. Come to the dev room if you want to ask questions.